Well, let's get started then. We are honored to have Naomi Whitehead this evening. Naomi is community liaison and upper primary coordinator at Brisbane Montessori School in Brisbane, with quite a background at also at Capalaba. We were just talking about. Well, why don't I let you talk more about your story and where did it begin? How did you discover Montessori?
Um, I was a prac student actually with USQ, and I was destined to do my second prac at the Brisbane School of Distance Education. And my university lecturer, who I to this day feel was very insightful, swapped my prac destination to Brisbane Montessori School. And I kind of walked in going, Monta what? Had a million and one questions. My first day, I was greeted with a very hyperactive principal who was very enthusiastic about absolutely everything Montessori, and put me in front of some Cycle 3 children. And I'm happy to say I'm teaching in that very same room today. Never left, never looked back. Love Montessori. That was my introduction. And there was, no other choice. It was for me.
So what does the community liaison part mean in your title?
So I've spent most of my Montessori education time with Brisbane Montessori School. I stepped away slightly, one to try and help a board who were trying to start up a school in the Redlands. We lost our facilities, and we had a phenomenal opportunity to open up a program within Capalaba State College, within the primary school. Within the first year, we had a bit of a bastardized program, but a Cycle 1, which consisted of Prep and Grade 1, and a Cycle 2, which was Grade 3 and Grade 4. The following, sorry, I got that wrong. Prep 1, 2, 3, that makes more sense. The following year, we opened up a Cycle 3, which I was blessed to be in charge of. And today sit there with 7 classes from Cycle 1 to Cycle 3. And next year are opening their Cycle 4 classroom on their senior campus. So my role now at Brisbane Montessori is to help support Capalaba with mentoring, but also to reach out to other schools that may not have access to a Montessori community, to help connect them to community, to help support them with mentoring and just general advice in how to have a successful Montessori program. So that's my community liaison role. I kind of add to that a little bit, thinking closer to home of improving school community, our local community at BMS, and trying to bring in everybody on the same page.
What have you most loved about being a Montessori educator?
Oh, so many things. I think for me, prior to entering Montessori, I was a student support teacher. And I used to work in mainstream public schools, and I used to take children out on the veranda to do their 20 minutes of learning support. And I always really felt for the children that I observed going back into the classroom, not really feeling like they've been part of the classroom, but pulled out in isolation to practice skills that they needed to develop. I think for me, when I first stepped into Montessori classroom, I saw really an education system that didn't let those kids sit on the outside, that actually welcomed them in, that enabled every child to be seen, no matter what, by the one individual that sat there in the classroom. They didn't need to be pulled away. They didn't need, anything different, because everybody was different anyway. So I think every day I'm always constantly reminded that's what has always drawn me to Montessori, is that need to connect children to learning and to passions that's there for them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So you've had a good taste of both worlds, the independent and the public Montessori sector. What can you say about the differences? Does that, what you just said about Montessori, do you think that applies equally to both public and private Montessori? Where does Montessori fit in the public sector?
I think it's harder for the public sector to have a Montessori program. I think teachers on either side are very dedicated to what they do, are very passionate about what they do, and they all come together with a common vision of working with children first. But there's less connection for the public schools. They don't have the same connection that you would find in the independent schools, primarily because they don't have the reach across the community, people connecting them or being strongly and passionately connecting them, I would say, because public schools are within their public school realm. They have to meet their regional directors' expectations. They have to meet, the Australian standards, the Queensland standards, so many other standards that they have to meet, that personal connection can sometimes get lost along the way. And I think that's that fundamental issue that we in the private sector can actually help fulfill that, because they don't have the same funds as the private sector to be able to pay for training. They don't have the longevity of staff. There's usually a high turnover of staff, unless you can find people who are particularly passionate to work in that area, but you have to be able to get them in there first and get them trained. So I think training, community connections, mentoring, these are all vital things that the public system are lacking, that they need so drastically. And I think the private sector is very privileged, and we can provide that.
Do you think that's true, that the public sector is lacking in funds, or is it a matter of priorities? Like whenever I go to public state schools, I see technology all over the place, and lots and lots of very expensive resources, and an army of itinerant support staff who come in and out of classrooms. And it just makes me wonder, like, is there really a lack of funding, or is it just spent in the wrong places? What is your view of that?
I would have to agree with being spent with a priority in mind. So, and that's usually directed down by whatever the priorities are for your state government. If technology and making sure that we're building computer literacy skills for our children is a priority, well, then classrooms get flooded with iPads and computers. If there's an agenda for regional to improve writing, then schools have a priority to direct all of their funds into that. If there's a school improvement agenda, which I know a couple of schools at the moment are doing, Lynn Sherratt's Clarity, they will pump lots of money into making sure that their staff are skilled. So Montessori isn't their priority. Montessori, successful Montessori programs rely on successful Montessori-minded principals and staff. And without that push that agenda, it doesn't happen. So you really need the passionate people behind it to be able to alter those larger agenda items that are pushed down from regional.
How do you think we can change those priorities in public education? Do you think it's a matter of making relationships with the right people in the education system?
I think it's about bridging the gap between what we do and what people think we do. That's a big component. Our public schools, they don't always know what Montessori is. And I know a couple of times I've been told by some mainstream teachers that are friends of mine, hey, when are you coming to teach in the real world? And I'd like to challenge that, say, no, there's some pretty real stuff that I do on a daily basis. Come and have a look at what we do and see how flexible we need to be, because we are on our feet all day. So I think there's a misconception that in Montessori, you know, we just let children do whatever they want. And so they think that we drop the curriculum agenda, whereas when we let children follow what they need to follow, the curriculum agenda just flows with it. So I think we need people to connect ideas, to build a bridge between language, allowing them to realize that what we do is legitimate. It's not just, you know, Montessori terminology that's just used within Montessori terminology, but we do inquiry-based learning, and we do explicit teaching. You know, our I do, we do, you do is our 3-period lesson. So it's about having people connect to bridge the gaps, to allow them to create a better idea of what we do, why we do it, that big picture stuff that maybe they're not always so privileged to, because there's a lot of perception out there that what we do is just about material and not necessarily anything more than that, when they realize that peace education can so closely be related to personal capabilities, when it can be related to any area of the curriculum, then they start to get a better picture. But it takes dedicated people to spend the time and the effort to do that. And I think, you know, anybody who has Montessori training is potentially a mentor for anyone out there who would like to learn how to use an integrated curriculum rather than curriculum in isolation, who want to learn how to be more child-centered. We have the opportunity to be able to showcase how that can happen and support others to do it.
So when you were at Capalaba State College, there was a Montessori stream and a mainstream stream. What was the relationship like? How was Montessori received by mainstream teachers, would you say?
I think I'm going to use the voice of the Cycle 3 students. They were very well aware that they were the weird kids on the side. They did things a little differently. But that was at the very beginning. That was, you know, we were doing something so far different that the only thing you could do was question it. You know, does it make sense? Do they do this? Do they do that? There was lots of confusion around assessments, behavior management. These children are always outside. Are they actually working? Well, yeah, they are. And building that relationship over a few years to be able to, one, for us to learn what they were doing in mainstream classrooms, so that it wasn't just one-sided, that it was a process of learning that everybody contributes something, and seeing each other for their values and their worth. Welcoming people into the classrooms to have a look, to spend time observing. And once all of those things started to flow, we started to see any of the tension, indifference just kind of dissipate, which was really beautiful to watch, actually, as people started to get to know each other. And that's all it is. It's communication, it's community. And the more that we can create a sense of community, the less weird a Montessori stream will be. So, yeah.
I was always really inspired by hearing about how you kind of straddled that difference between Montessori culture and traditional education culture. Like, I remember you telling me about how you dealt with the awards in the Friday assemblies. That, you know, you want to tell that story?
So the rest of the school would, and we would go along and sit in with parade, you know, every Friday, and there were certificates that would be handed out, and there were PBL tickets for positive behavior that would be handed out. Big song and dance, and our children missed out, so there were lots of discussions with the children about how they felt about that, what would make it different for them. Did they need to feel included in that space? How do they think that we could best include them? So a lot of the decisions were made based on the children's thoughts and feelings. And that was where that comment, "Oh, we're happy to be the weird kids on the side," came out. We don't mind. We don't need certificates. We've got something better. We've actually got a learning that we can do here. We can follow our own dreams. Nobody else has got that. I'm like, nice, okay. And then eventually the children came up with an idea to do acknowledgements. So we'd have an acknowledgement box and the children would put in acknowledgements. We had a little acknowledgement committee, and the acknowledgement committee would select somebody, and all of the acknowledgements for that person would go into a certificate. We ended up having a community award that we were using for some time there, and I'm hoping that they're still doing that now, where it was basically your peers have acknowledged you for doing this. So it never came from me. It was never a tick and flick thing. It was very genuinely from them. So.
Valerie, do you have a comment or a question?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, Naomi.
Hi, Valerie.
My question is about the principal at Capalaba. You said that he was very Montessori minded to start off with. Do you think that's the prerequisite for making this happen in public schools?
I think there were a couple of factors that were involved. Capalaba was at about 60% capacity at the time, so they needed a boost in numbers. They had the space. The college principal approached the regional manager and said, look, we've got a curriculum here. So we'd written up a whole school plan for the private school in the Redlands that didn't go through. And that was presented to the college principal. And he said, well, why don't we just, we've got a couple of spare classrooms. Why don't we just pop you in? So one, you need a principal who's going to say yes and who's going to recognize the curriculum. And you need a whole school curriculum plan that reflects what they know so that they can feel justified in being able to apply Australian curriculum to it. The junior campus principal, we went through a couple of junior campus principals in the time that I was there. The junior campus principal that they have there now is his children have gone to a Montessori childcare centre, so that definitely helps. He signed up for the job knowing that there was a Montessori program there, extremely eager to learn anything along the way. So we could have random conversations and he'll be sitting there going, yes, I need to learn about that. Quick, send me everything you've got. So you need somebody who's willing to think that way, who's willing to say, okay, there's a bigger picture here and maybe we need to do it differently. I think it's also being able to connect them into the research of what they're already looking at. So flexible learning centres, inquiry-based learning, these are things that are being described in many of the educational research that's coming out saying, let's do this. This conveyor belt approach that we're doing is not necessarily working. So you need somebody who's ready and on board to run that, because no matter what, it's change. And usually somebody who's willing to do that with a Montessori stream are also willing to make that roll out in the rest of the school as well. Not necessarily Montessori, but definitely child-centered and inquiry-based learning. So you need somebody passionate enough to drive it and to stick it out. You need that longevity, most definitely, in the leadership.
Montessori educators are very famously autonomous minded and creative individuals who want to follow their own path, and that's part of how we inspire that, of course, in children. Tends to attract that kind of personality, I guess. And yet the state education system seems to be more and more, as the years go by, more and more focused on having teachers follow procedures and tick boxes and do what they're told and so on, and follow scripts. Do you think this box ticking obsession works against implementing Montessori in the public sector, or is it something we can work with, do you think,
No,
successfully?
I do think it's something that we can work with. Look, in the back of my mind, as I'm going through working with children, I'm mentally ticking boxes. I'm mentally connecting children to curriculum. I don't think there's any concern about being able to make sure that you can tick boxes. What you need to be able to do is to provide the offerings of alternative assessments and what they look like. Assessment data is highly sought after in public systems. So you need to be able to justify and find suitable alternatives. I don't think I ever compromised on that while I was teaching at Capella Bar. I still observed, just like I would in a Montessori classroom. I took samples of writing to be able to have a look at, writing assessments. I think it can be done. I just think you need to make sure that you've got people with that bigger picture in mind to be able to make it unfold. People who are willing to have a look at it that way. So I personally don't see a problem with it at all. I think it can be done. It's just a different way of looking at the ticking of the boxes. And look, public school systems have been working the same way for, hundreds of years, and they're always looking at that long-term citizen in mind, getting them prepared for a workforce that we have not yet imagined, which seems a little bit, counterintuitive. But, when there's an ability to be able to put faith in the child and move away from that, they need evidence to see that. So if we want public schools to be successful, I think schools like Capella Bar and Groverley, if they do it well, they get to showcase the marvels that Montessori can bring. And they don't even have to call it Montessori at the end of the day. They just need to focus on the child for the child's passions and futures. And whammo, they've done the job. They'll have children, following along generally. I'll say generally. We all know there's a couple of children out there who need, to be pulled along a little bit. But yeah, generally, if you put it in front of them and you tell them you are trusted with this is your future. And I'm here to help you. If you're genuine about it, children will jump on board and ticking boxes won't even matter.
I think it also helps to have your adaptable mindset. It's something I've really appreciated about you, Naomi, and also your incredibly thorough understanding of ACARA, as well as the Montessori curriculum, and your ability to mesh both of them together and see the commonalities. It's really pretty impressive. So I think that's really prerequisite for being successful in the public sector with Montessori.
I think it's a prerequisite for being flexible. I think that's where it comes down to is Montessori educators are some of the most flexible human beings that I've ever met in the classroom. The work that they do in bouncing from idea to idea and being able to pick up any area of the curriculum, it just goes to show the value in really understanding the content to be able to help children in any direction. And I think it's a gift that we can definitely share with the world, and hopefully help other people see it, because I don't know, I see the connections. I think they're very easy to see. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I don't want to put any pressure on anyone. But yeah, once you can see them, you can't unsee them. So I think there's always value in spending time in both curriculums, really, really having a look at it and pulling it apart so that you can be a better educator in that space, no matter what. And that's private or public sector. I just think that's good teaching practice.
What do you think are the factors that have really stood in the way of Montessori becoming more widespread and available in Australia? Like we have, is it 11, I think, 11 public schools with Montessori streams in Australia. The United States has almost 600. So bigger population, but the population is bigger by a factor of what, 11 or 12 or something.
Yeah.
And but 11 compared to 600 is a little bit more than that. What do you think? And Montessori's been in Australia as long as it has been in the United States. What do you think is in the way here?
So first of
What
all,
is it?
we may have been around as long, but I still think we're still an unknown entity. I think we actually have to showcase ourselves more as an education system, as a pedagogy. Once again, that's that community work. It's not just sticking with your niche group. Montessorians are really great at hanging out with Montessorians, and having coming back from the Congress in Thailand, I have to say, sitting with 57 other countries, all talking about the same thing is phenomenal. But how often do we talk about Montessori across the different education systems? How often do we showcase what we do alongside mainstream? We don't very often. And so I think we have a responsibility to be able to showcase ourselves a lot more, just to take away the mystery. And I know one of the first things that I usually say is, look, we're not hippie vegan cults, because that's what a lot of people think we are, so to remove the mystery and showcase who we are, I think is, first of all, one of the most valuable things we can do. The cost of training. The cost of training is not always achievable for some. We've got a lot of young teachers who are coming up, young educators who are coming up, who don't necessarily have the access or the ability to access the Montessori training. Sometimes you have to go with, how would we say this delicately? Less renowned Montessori training. We have to sacrifice high quality Montessori training because we either can't get there or we just can't afford it. I know myself, that's one of the reasons why I went through NAMC. I was a single mother who couldn't go to Bergamo for a year. What a shame. I would have loved to in a heartbeat, but that was not an option for me. So I think we need to make Montessori training more accessible to people. We need to make it more adaptable to today's learners, adult learners. We, just like the children, struggle to sit in that whole lecture experience. I know I can do about 2 days. By the third day, I'm wandering. So we need to think about our educators as well as students, not just the children. I think there are two biggest factors that really, hold us back.
And you made NAMC training work for you by surrounding yourself with mentors, experienced mentors at Brisbane Montessori. And I guess a lot of people who have that who need to choose that training don't have that option because there aren't those mentors around. There aren't a lot of mentors in Australia.
No.
So
no.
there's this old.
Look, Mark, I think as anyone who's trained, I think we can get really stuck in this idea of this is my classroom and this is the space that I'm working in. But really, I'd like to see a Montessori community where people are reaching out to help each other, where we're recognizing that our role as Montessori educators not only reflects our cosmic task, but also reflects our cosmic task with children, but perhaps a cosmic obligation I would call it, to reach out to other educators to support and help them, even if it's just a chat, or an observation in a classroom. The things that you share in that space are so powerful, and we need to make the most of that experience.
Ilona, do you have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Naomi. I have a question for Naomi, actually. I'm jumping on your remark about the Montessori community.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know how your position of community liaison and mentor was created, and how are you greeted by teachers once you are on the spot?
So when I returned to Brisbane Montessori, for me, I think Brisbane Montessori, there's a bit of a family feeling. So I'm quite happy to go back to Brisbane Montessori School. I didn't.
I remember you calling it the Montessori Resort when you
I did.
You want to explain
I
what
think
that means?
2.5 years at Capalaba, doing lots and lots of travel and trying to. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to put in a public school system program, and I think I was in an interesting position where I fulfilled several roles all at once. So I was pretty tired by the time I left, but I didn't want to say goodbye. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that were put into that program, and so upon my return to Brisbane Montessori, it was one of my conditions that I still needed to be able to support Capalaba pro bono, recognizing that what was started there was not yet complete, and that we needed to be able to continue that process. And that under a successful school such as Brisbane Montessori, there's an opportunity for us to put more out to the community and to support the Montessori community. And so my role was created as community liaison from that request. I was pretty firm that I wouldn't go back unless I could meet that need. I've been very fortunate. I do twice a term, I go and visit Capalaba. I'll observe in classrooms. I will sit down with the junior campus principal and unpack ideas. We're hoping to get some workshops in the running so that in their time we can create an opportunity for teachers to learn. I do not experience any negativity when I rock up to Capalaba. In fact, I feel a bit like a rock star at times, first of all, with the children who know me, who I've been doing their morning messages every morning for the last 2.5 years. They're excited to see me, and I get to watch them grow, and they get to give me their feedback on the program. And so always child-centered first. And then I get the beautiful opportunity to sit down with teachers and ask them, how are you feeling? What are you really struggling with? What would make this better for you? To observe and to unpack, the things that we do naturally as a teacher when we freak out that we're not doing enough, which we do. We kind of run around 100 miles an hour trying to solve all the problems, instead of sitting back and taking time to observe what's actually happening in that space. So I get to help teachers out with that. And yeah, it's a beautiful and honest conversation that's built on trust. So yeah, and there's a lot of trust that's put in there. So I think you have to ooze that authenticity to be able to step into what can be a very delicate situation for some teachers, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed. To be able to move in there with a lot of grace and courtesy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There's this old question about whether, if you can't do Montessori perfectly, whether you should do it at all, because if you don't do it properly, you can damage children. So what's your take on that question? Is some Montessori better than none, or should you wait until you can do it properly before you initiate it?
Look, all change comes with uncertainty. a great deal of uncertainty. Look, I've sat there and I've listened to the naysayers who say that you can't do it because it'll be a watered down approach. Whether it's under the term Montessori or not under the term Montessori, if you're really working towards wanting teachers to connect with their students, what's wrong with that? If you're trying to help teachers learn how to integrate curriculum, what's wrong with that? If you're trying to encourage teachers to use concrete materials for children to be able to access concepts better, what's wrong with that? I don't see any negatives to doing it. We have an education system that is crying out for change. We have a window of opportunity at the moment. With COVID, we had families recognize that there had to be a different way to do things, that there had to be a better way to do things. Families are so more aware of, I would say, the struggles that mainstream are facing than what they ever were before. And I think a little is better than nothing at all. We have to make a change somewhere. We have to start somewhere. Why not with a little bit of Montessori? Why not? And then, build from there.
And I guess one of the biggest changes that needs to happen to bring Montessori into classrooms anywhere is in the attitude of the teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And you, if I can just share this, you recently published this article, Peace Education on the Transformation of the Teacher, which just the latest e-article from Montessori Australia. Would you like to just run us through what your message is in this article?
I think my big focus for this article was we as educators, we as adults that work with children, we have a huge responsibility. And we should be constantly reminded of that if we're not already reminding ourselves. We are the role models. We are in every way, shape, or form the spotlight for children's learning and behaviour. If we as adults cannot role model grace and courtesy, we have no right to expect it from children. If we as adults cannot learn to work with each other, we have no right to expect that of our children. We have to role model it. And I think one of those lovely moments where, in front of children, you see it, where you'll have a teacher yelling at a child, telling them not to yell at them. And you're kind of going, I'm not sure if that's going to work for you. Yeah, you might want to choose a different approach. But it's...
You're so diplomatic.
Pardon?
You're so diplomatic now.
Just be nice, people, just be nice. There's a better way to do it. Like, children are not, little beings that we can just order around. They're the people who will be in charge of our nursing homes. And I'm just going to put that out there. I'm fearful of this. Okay. I'm really fearful of this. Adults, we need to live and breathe this. And I think more so when we're working with Montessori or within a Montessori community, we have a responsibility to be able to role model that with each other as well. How we talk to each other in staff meetings can unfold how a day happens, how we, the ground talk that can happen in the background about people, that affects how we function. If you have somebody who offloads a whole heap of negativity at you, it affects how we work with children. And so I think, one, we have a responsibility to remind people that they're meant to be role models. To be able to
everyday disrespect too that happens, that becomes I think that we become so used to that we become blinded to, like for example, whenever I go into public schools, I see kids eating lunch on the pavement where people walk, and it just rankles me to watch that. And I just see it as blatant disrespect to children, because you wouldn't ask adults. No. You wouldn't ask the teaching staff, go eat on the pavement where people walk, but we expect children, and it's okay to do that to children because they're just children. right? And there's so many other examples of that, like not giving them any choice over the choices the work they choose in the classroom, those kinds of things. Because they're children, we don't notice it, but it's just this everyday respect that adults tend to be blind to.
Yeah, and I think socially, there's an expectation of adults being in charge in society and not giving that freedom to be able to develop skills, to be responsible and accountable for our actions. And if we don't actually set up a situation where we respect children to be able to fulfill those roles, then I don't think we have a right to expect them to step up to the expectations that we're expecting. Oh, that was a lot of expecting.
Valerie,
So I haven't read the article you've written, but it sounds like it was maybe being aimed at educators. But
you can download it, by the way, off the
probably
Montessori.
more so
I'll-
leaders.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a shot at leaders as well. Yeah.
But one of the biggest things for me is about parent education. So when we discovered Montessori, not only did we think it was great for our child to go into as an education system, but it completely changed our approach to parenting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents that have their children at Montessori don't get Montessori from that perspective.
Yeah.
So, and again, whose job is it to educate the parents? At the moment, we've only got schools to be able to do it. But I think the more, the positive parenting approach thing that I've seen advertised or whatever, again, there's a lot of research about all this sort of stuff where you go, just look at Montessori. It's already, it's all there. So I don't know, at Capalaba, for example, where did the parents that enrolled their kids in the Montessori program come from? How did they find out about Montessori? And how much of Montessorians were that?
Yeah. That was always a tricky balance. People would come in because they love Montessori. They'd come from Montessori childcare centres. So that was beautiful. We had parents that would bring their child in because they were looking for a quick fix, which we know Montessori is not a quick fix. Quick fixes don't exist. And so a lot of parent education actually had to happen around that stage of enrollment, because unfortunately we didn't always get to see the enrollment. So they'd end up in your classroom. And that was then up to the teachers to communicate how we do things. We're building opportunities at the moment for parents to be able to continue that journey of educating themselves through workshops and stuff like that. That's a bit of work in the background there that we're doing at the moment, just to try and enable parents to have that bit of information, because you can't always guarantee that they're going to have the information. And Maria Montessori herself was very quick to point out that adult biases really play a part in all the negativity that can be contributed to the world. Bless us adults and our set minds. And we have a responsibility as role models to articulate that to the parents who are also role models, so that they can see that bigger picture, that it can't just be just in the classroom in this time, but it has to be that whole community approach. And I think I didn't really get to see the importance of community until I was at Capalaba, where I always thought it was really strange that these Montessori parents, in the private sector were always hanging around school. Like, they just love it. They don't go home. And then I realized, oh, this is actually a very Montessori thing, no matter where you are. Parents love it. They don't go home. So not until somebody locks the gate and then they'll go home. So I think we have a responsibility there to hold community together. And wouldn't it be nice if we could see that connection between home and school really tightened up again, when there's so much mistrust at the moment? So excuse me for just 1 second.
You reminded me of another aspect of, a difference there, which is the freedom of the Montessori teacher. We all know how, shall I say, obsessive some Montessori teachers can be about, their classrooms and wanting to go in on Saturdays and stay late after
I don't know what you're
school to get
saying,
everything
Mark. I don't know what you're
perfect.
talking about.
And so is that an issue in public Montessori as well? The inability to go in, stay late and,
Yeah,
get things just right at your own time.
really strange. I had to really work with the cleaners to let me in early. And then eventually they gave me a gate key. They discovered that I was a little bit more annoying than what they intended. But yeah, weekends were offline. School holidays, you couldn't go in. So you were trying to prepare an environment in a very tight time frame, just because it's not something that they're used to. Yeah.
Did that help you manage the work-life balance, or did it just make you more anxious?
I think it made me more anxious, really. I don't know. I really enjoy the process of sitting in my classroom though for, a day and just pottering around and cleaning things up and making materials. You don't get to do that necessarily when the children are there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So have you figured out the work-life balance, that this elusive, what's it
It is
called?
rather elusive, isn't it? I think I'm getting better at it. And I'm wondering if that comes with age. I don't know. I watch new teachers and they've got so much energy, bless them, and they're ready to tackle everything. And I was like, oh, I remember being like that. Maybe I'm getting old. But I won't say that out aloud too often. But no, I'm still working on it. I think I'll always be working on it, really. I think I'm built this way as well. So that's a little tricky. I don't expect anyone to work as much as I do, because I think I have a very unrealistic view of what work is. It's also what I'm passionate about. So I'm a little bit stuck on that. Like, I love doing Montessori things. So I will be at home learning new things. I will be at home making material. At the moment, I'm, because why not? I love art and I'm learning how to use Procreate. So I'm actually trying to make some materials that work on Procreate. Why not? Incorporate the things that I love together. So yeah, I don't think I've worked that out, Mark.
I was wondering if Andy, if you're still around, you published an essay in the chat section. I wondered if you, I haven't gotten to read it, if you wanted to ask a question or make a comment.
Yeah, moment. I'm actually still here. Can you see me now? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, good. No, what I realized in the public school is that we don't communicate actually about public schools. That's the biggest problem. Yeah, when you were at the AMC, I don't know if you have been to the ESF sections. I have been to only the talks in the ESF because this was the only one which were very interesting. And nearly in all the talks which were there, I was amazed about what is going on. But nobody actually in the rooms knew about it. And the biggest example was Tanzania. 2,564 Montessori schools, 6,000 teachers. 25% of the population aware about Montessori, 8% even trained fully in Montessori. We were sitting there with our mouths open and said, how can? And the biggest thing is actually that AMI has a training center there, and they're doing this since 1967. It's not something which is coming up now. No, they're doing this since 1967, and they're supporting this. The government is supporting it. And the situation we have there in Tanzania is a dream from what we have actually worldwide, even in Germany. In Germany, we have a lot of schools there, but and we have a lot of public schools there because we have a complete different training system. Yeah, we train public teachers.
Yeah.
And you can teach only in a school when you are a public teacher. And that's also why I wrote back to the AMI today again, because we have here in Phuket a little bit of problem. We have a school which is advertising as an AMI Montessori school. And so I was simply asking them, is this the case? Is this certified from AMI or not? No, we don't know. It's actually copyrighted and then trademark and whatever. They came up with a lot of things there. I said, okay, then please clear this up. And today I came about another school, which is actually even called Montessori minus also hyphen ami.edu.hk, which looks like it's, wow, this is the Montessori school. Yeah, because it's using the same AMI domain. And the people underestimate what domains actually do. Domains create an image. That is why Tim Selden is so successful. He is running Montessori.org. And this is where the problem started. He is running Montessori, not AMI. Yeah, what he's doing, he can do anything. He put it, oh, sorry, now it's getting loud here. He's doing Montessori and promoting it in a way we actually need to do exactly the same, but on a public school system. And the only way to actually doing this is AMI has lost, moment I go around the corner. AMI has lost the control, I would say, about all the training and then all the business actually around the Montessori. And if they don't start to simply take now the lead in the free Montessori training or in the affordable Montessori training, they're out of business. Simply to say this, they won't get in anymore.
Naomi,
Actually,
do you want to comment on Andy's?
If I would team up, for example, with Gavin, yeah, Gavin does Montessori training. Gavin McCormick, yeah. Erica Frank has the platform to do the whole thing, publish it, everything worldwide. We put in Tasmanian University with dementia. Well, AMI, we don't need. Sorry to say this, yeah. Then we take Montessori Australia, which with the talks, we take Prague, which I'm talking actually in the evening about. She's trying to promote exactly the same. She says, yes, we have a big problem there. We cannot go further. We have to change. Mm-hmm. And this change has to come either from the leadership, and if it's not coming from the AMI leadership, okay, then the base has to do it. That's my opinion. Yeah, and that's us.
I would completely agree with you. It has to come from us. It has to come from us connecting. I think we, and look, I'm about to do my AMI training. I start in week 10. So I understand the differences, the inaccessibility to AMI training. I understand the importance of having good mentors who can help support that, because if you don't have that, you don't always have access to it. And you're right, we need to train more teachers. If we're not upping the game of training teachers and making training more accessible, we're going to lose a beautiful fundamental process here.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's too valuable to lose, in my opinion. And so I think this is where my call comes in, is that we actually need to form a stronger bond together. We need our Montessori community to band together and support each other, so that when we do have holes, we can help each other get through it. It can't be one school sitting in isolation. It has to be all of us coming together, and not necessarily in a conference hall. I mean, the Congress was amazing, and we always come out of that with big ideas. But it has to be at the grassroots as well. And to quote Dimitri, forgive me, I can't remember who is the principal of, what school is Dimitri at?
Central Coast.
I think so, yes. What we actually need to do is sit around a great big bonfire and have a great old talk about what it is that we do. Until we start connecting, we won't actually see the change, because we're treating everything in isolation. And I think MI have an agenda to be able to ensure the safety of Montessori and Montessori's work, an important job. But I think changing with the times is also really important in making sure that their training is more accessible.
Yeah. And the other thing is actually that we, how should I say, we have to meet more often. That's why I'm very happy actually with what Mark is doing here. And only to let you know, I have the domain actually Montessori Congress.online. because I am in Thailand, and I talk many times to them, make it available for everyone. I have the
Yes.
domain, use the domain, make it available for everyone. They did not do it.
Oh,
Yeah,
sad.
they had the chance to do it. So I had, and then I talked to people in Africa, which says, sorry, we cannot afford even the flight.
Mm.
The same South Africa, South America, sorry, not South Africa, South America, Peru. They said, Andy, when we want to go over there, it's completely around the world. It's so expensive. And then the expensive course, it's not possible. So the format has to change. And so my idea is actually, and I hope that Mark or some, you have to discuss this with your team. What about we doing every 3 months a weekend only, and we simply do this in 4 time zones? For example, in January, we do a congress in Australia. 3 months later, in May, we do this in Thailand. And 3 months later, we do this in the time zone of Africa and Europe. And then 3 months later in America. So at least in 3 of these congresses, everyone could participate. And they could have then a mini congress, yeah? But they could have a mini congress sitting together in person in the time region where you are. Then they have cheap flights. It's no problem. They can go there. They can have then also visiting schools and so on. But those are the people which can help each other also, because they are near to each other. They can visit each other. They can learn from each other.
You're hitting on a really important point, Andy, which is about connection among Montessorians. And I think getting together, particularly in person as well as online, is really important. And actually, Dimitri is one of the speakers at our conference in Sydney in late October. And at that conference, one of our priorities was something you were talking about, Naomi, which is trying to bring in the non-Montessori education community as well. To, you know, Montessorians tend to like to sit in a room with other Montessorians and talk about Montessori, but it doesn't really help us to do that. And so, you know, we brought in speakers from outside Montessori as well as Montessori, about 50-50, I'd say, and with a view to encouraging non-Montessori audiences as well. So I think it'll be a really exciting conference. The theme is transformation of the teacher. So I encourage everyone to have a look at the brochure I put in the chat, and come along if you're able to make it, October 28th and 29th.
Yeah,
Naomi,
but the price is also expensive.
It is, but that's, yeah, it's unfortunately that's the way that things work in Australia. Is
it's always the same problem. Yeah, the flight to go there now for Australia would be cheap, but the conference itself is too much for people then from Thailand folks to come down there, which would be great. Yeah, but they cannot.
Yeah, we do actually have a couple of people from Thailand who are coming. So Naomi, thanks again for your time this evening. Really appreciate hearing your story.
Thank you for inviting me, Mark. It's been wonderful to have a chat.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.